We are, Chapter 11, Kinesiology 223, Chapter 11, more about leadership, book presentation number 2, effective communication, communication breakdowns, and tips for improving communication. Within the context of this presentation, we're talking about how you essentially send messages effectively, and it becomes a conversation of sending and receiving messages. You have to think of this in terms of if you prepared your athletes to be able to receive what it is that you're sending, if they're able to pick up what you're putting down, if you want to say it like that, they will be more receptive to messages that you're sending, both verbal, nonverbal, and it can be written as well. But to be an effective communicator, you have to be able to send a message, and that message itself, it could be broad-based in terms of having a large vision for a corporation. We talked about leader, manager, follower, and the leaders are the ones who craft the vision. And as a result of having a vision for a corporation, they have to then craft the message and really the drivers for being able to fulfill that mission. And it's about sending the message correctly, but it's also about creating the right message that will reach the right people correctly. Now, these are skills that are teachable. They're skills that can be refined. And you have to understand, and we talked about it in a previous presentation, communication is a two-way street, and communication as a two-way street becomes a conversation. And communication also encompasses the person who is the communicator, the person delivering the message, and the person who's receiving the message. And what they find is when you have athletes, if we look down here, if you have athletes who they feel good about the coach's communication style, I'm kind of paraphrasing this, then they will be more receptive to their communication. And it's a matter of having a understanding, and as you put it down here, the study by Miller, an awareness, of the verbal communications with the athletes, and a self-awareness really heightens that communication process. To just basically stand up in front of your athletes and churn out directive after directive after directive and not really having communication per se, or having communication as very one way, is not the way to do it. You have to be able to give and take when it comes to communication, especially with your athletes as well. Now, there's no doubt there's times in the context of a competitive season or a practice environment, or even within the context of a one-on-one teaching session, some of the communication you deliver is very poignant and to the point, and it has to be delivered to get a response out of the person. But then there might be some of that give and take that we often talk about in terms of being able to evaluate, or more importantly, refine performance. You have an expectation of what your person wants to accomplish. You give them a directive, they acknowledge the directive, and then you're able to work with them to be able to achieve that task or directive. But again, if as a coach you don't have a good rapport with your athletes, and your athletes don't have a kind of a feel good regarding your coaching style, the message just won't hit. It just won't resonate with your athletes. So verbal messages. With verbal, it's best to be clear, concise, be direct. You don't have to be harsh to be direct. You can be direct and be polite and positive. And you have to, based on this quote from Parcells, you have to be honest and accurate, but you also have to realize that somebody might not be willing to receive that message at that time. Bill Parcells was a football coach, and let's just say one of his athletes on the field makes a mistake, turns the ball over, and that person might be at that moment receptive to hearing where maybe they made the mistake in turning the ball over, or if they're very frustrated or irate, they might not be ready at that moment, but still the coach can go over at a later time once that athlete is kind of tempered down or pulled back a little bit, and be able to have a conversation with them. Here's what I saw, here's why I think the ball came out, and here was the issue. So, it depends on situation, time, and place. And the T part, the time, is kind of important sometimes when you start talking about the message, because if it's a situation that has the ability to be very much a high anxiety type of moment, and it's a moment where there's a lot of stress involved, sometimes the message you deliver might not be the one that is received by your athlete. So sometimes you just have to evaluate what it is and when you're going to say it, and also how you say it. So, we know that as a result, when you say this, you just have to be able to broad base, understand the person you're delivering the message to, what the message is about, how you're delivering that message, and then within that whole context, Is it something that they're able to receive within that moment? Sometimes not. So communication happens between two or more people, right? And there will be times where there's breakdowns within the communication process itself. And these sometimes can happen, just as a result of you're delivering a message and the message is not interpreted correctly. When you're in a coached environment and you have a coached environment where you've been working with your athletes for a while, and here you are, you're in a practice environment, you want to offer a coaching cue, because that relationship has a long history and there's been a cultivation of communication between you and your athlete, many times you don't have to be long-winded and really be abrasive with your athletes. You can say, Jimmy, I need you to do this, this, and this instead of that, that, and that. And it's not as though you're offering harsh criticism per se. You're just trying to help them refine their skill set. And as a result, the athlete is already under the pretense that you're delivering a message to help them become a better athlete. And that's like true in 99.999% of the case, but there's also that 0.00001% where the coach is just doing it to be difficult. And I would state that as a coach, as you're working with communication as a key component of what you do to deliver content, you also work under the premise that you've very much established within your relationship the ability to give and take within communication, both verbal and nonverbal. And what I like about this, the book goes into this on 250, I believe it is. They jump into tips for improving communication. And I would urge you to kind of read through these. And if you're going into coaching or if you're going to be working with people, even in a managerial kind of sense, these are kind of key takeaways that you can have in terms of acknowledge the greetings of other, always have a hello and a smile. These are kind of like basic things that you sometimes forget about in life. But you have to be able to know your expectations and convey those expectations and be able to explain them. And you don't have to be mean about it. You can just say, this is what I want and this is how I want it done. And the book does a really good job of putting this together on just one page. And I urge you to take a look at it and kind of read through it. They give the HERE principle, where it's head up, eyes front, attend fully, and remain silent. I like it. Real easy way to remember it. Real easy way to integrate that in with your athletes. So again, it's a simple kind of takeaway on a one-pager that they have in the book that you can utilize as you go forward. All right, guys, moving on to the next presentation.